The challenge. Dr. Sarah Chen stood before the gleaming doors of the Galactic Defense Summit, her pulse quickening as she adjusted the worn leather satchel at her side. Inside lay humanity's latest contribution to interstellar warfare, though most of the beings gathered here today would hardly consider it worthy of the term. The Grand Hall of Innovation on New Perseus Station lived up to its name. Crystalline walls stretched hundreds of meters overhead, refracting starlight into dancing patterns across the assembled delegates. Representatives from over 300 spacefaring civilizations filled the tiered seating, their forms ranging from ethereal light beings to towering silicon-based arthropods. Sarah couldn't help but feel small among them. Humanity had only achieved faster-than-light travel 40 years ago, joining the galactic community as its youngest member. Most species here had been crossing the stars while humans were still figuring out bronze tools. Next presenter, Earth Defense Forces, Dr. Sarah Chen. The AI announcer's voice resonated through the chamber. Topic: Practical applications of quantum-linked ballistic systems. A ripple of amusement passed through the audience. The Droxy delegate to her left, its tentacles wrapped in ceremonial plasma fields, made a sound like bubbling mercury, their equivalent of a snicker. Ballistic weapons. The translator rendered the Droxy's words into English. How charmingly prehistoric. Sarah had expected this reaction. The galaxy had long since moved beyond physical projectiles, embracing energy weapons, gravity manipulation, and even weaponized spacetime. But that was precisely why her team's breakthrough was so important. She reached the central platform, activating her holoprojector. The image of what appeared to be an ordinary rifle materialized above the stage. Distinguished delegates, she began, her voice steady despite her nerves. What you see before you may look simple, even crude by your standards. But I assure you, appearances can be deceiving. The Droxy delegate's tentacles writhed with barely contained mirth. Does it fire little metal pellets? How quaint. Sarah smiled. Actually, it fires nothing at all. She manipulated the hologram, expanding it to show the weapon's internal components. This is the QX-7 quantum ballistic system. It doesn't fire conventional ammunition. Instead, it creates quantum-entangled pairs of kinetic energy states. The laughter died down slightly as a few of the more scientifically minded delegates leaned forward. When triggered, the weapon instantaneously transfers the kinetic energy of a hypothetical bullet into the target, without the bullet ever physically existing or traveling through space. Now she had their attention. A Moravian physicist, their crystalline form glowing with interest, raised an appendage, but the energy requirements would be minimal. Sarah interrupted. Because we're not creating matter or converting energy. We're exploiting quantum tunneling to transfer purely kinetic states between entangled points in space. The energy cost is less than firing a conventional round. She gestured, and a targeting drone emerged from her satchel. Perhaps a demonstration would be more convincing. The drone projected a series of hard-light barriers, standard defense shields used throughout the galaxy. Sarah raised the rifle. Our tests have shown that because no physical projectile exists to be stopped, energy shields are completely ineffective against quantum ballistic weapons. The kinetic transfer occurs at the quantum level, bypassing conventional defenses. She pulled the trigger. There was no sound, no flash, no visible projectile. The hard-light barriers simply shattered, the drone behind them developing a perfect hole through its center. The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates leaped to their feet, some in alarm, others in excitement. The Droxy's tentacles had gone completely still, their species' expression of shock. Impossible, the Moravian physicist exclaimed. The energy calculations, the quantum mechanics involved. How did you? Sometimes, Sarah said quietly, though her words carried in the sudden silence. Being primitive means you look at problems differently. While the galaxy perfected energy weapons, humanity kept experimenting with kinetic systems. We never stopped asking, what if about technologies others considered obsolete? She lowered the rifle. The QX7 is just the beginning. We're already developing larger versions for ship-to-ship combat, and we're willing to share this technology with our allies. The Droxy delegate's translator crackled. Why would you share such an advantage? Sarah's expression grew serious. Because humanity remembers being alone in the dark. Now that we're part of the galactic community, we'd rather light new candles than curse the darkness, even if it means using old matches in new ways. As the implications sank in, the chamber filled with excited discussion. Humanity's primitive approach had just revolutionized warfare. But more importantly, they had chosen to share their discovery rather than hoard it. Sarah packed up her equipment, hiding a smile. Sometimes the best way to silence laughter was not with force, but with innovation. Humanity had just earned its place at the galactic table, not through conquest or intimidation, but by proving that wisdom could come from unexpected places. And this was only the beginning. The warning. 3 months after the defense summit, Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the Moravian science vessel Crystal Thought, watching the impossible unfold through the reinforced viewport. The colony world of New Aldebaran burned, not from conventional weapons. Plasma storms or antimatter cascades would have been almost comforting in their familiarity. Instead, patches of reality simply ceased. Spherical voids appeared in the atmosphere, in buildings, in the planet's crust itself. Perfect circles of nothing, as if portions of existence had been surgically removed. 19th colony hit in 2 weeks, Admiral Vexthor of the Droxy Defense Fleet said quietly, his tentacles coiled tightly, a sign of extreme distress. Our weapons have no effect. Energy beams pass through their ships. Plasma torpedoes dissipate before impact. Even gravity weapons can't get a lock. Sarah studied the sensor readings for the 100th time. The attacking vessels defied conventional physics. They absorbed or redirected every form of energy thrown at them. Conventional matter couldn't even approach their hulls. It simply disappeared, consumed by the same void spheres they used as weapons. The consensus is meeting in emergency session, Vexthor continued. 27 species have already fallen back to their core worlds. The Moravian Crystalline Collective is considering full withdrawal to their home dimension. Sarah's hand unconsciously touched the QX7 rifle at her hip. After her presentation at the summit, she'd been appointed humanity's representative to the Galactic Defense Council. Now, watching another world die, she wondered if they'd all missed something obvious. "Show me the void sphere analysis again," she said. The Moravian scientist, Ixtal, projected a holographic model. The spheres appear to be regions where space-time itself has been folded away, not destroyed, relocated, as if something is physically removing portions of our universe and storing them elsewhere. Sarah's mind raced, like quantum tunneling, but at a macro scale. They're not destroying matter and energy. They're transferring it. Precisely. Ixtal's crystalline form pulsed with approval. But the energy requirements for such manipulation should be minimal. Sarah interrupted, an idea forming. Because they're not creating or destroying. They're exploiting existing quantum connections. She pulled up the specs for the QX7. Just like we did. Vexthor's tentacles writhed in realization. Your quantum ballistic technology works on the same principle. Sarah finished. We designed it to transfer kinetic states through quantum entanglement, but with modifications. She began rapidly inputting calculations. The attackers aren't invincible. They're using quantum mechanics to redirect everything we throw at them. But if we can match their frequency, disrupt their quantum fields, even a primitive kinetic weapon could work. Ixtal hummed thoughtfully. Because it's not about the weapon. It's about the quantum state of the attack itself. Sarah nodded grimly. Humanity spent centuries perfecting ballistic weapons while the rest of the galaxy moved to energy-based systems. We never stopped studying the quantum mechanics of physical impacts. Now that knowledge might save us all. A new alert flashed across the screens. More void ships had appeared in nearby systems. The attack was spreading. We need to modify every QX7 we have. Sarah said, already reaching for her communicator. And we need to scale up the technology for capital ships. But most importantly, she looked at her alien colleagues. We need to work together. My team understands quantum ballistics, but we'll need Moravian quantum computing and Droxy energy manipulation to make this work. Vexthor's tentacles relaxed slightly, a gesture of agreement. The same delegates who laughed at your primitive technology 3 months ago will now be begging for it. Let them beg, Sarah said firmly. We don't have time for pride. Every minute we waste, another world burns. She pulled up the QX7 schematics. Humanity remembers being vulnerable, being the youngest child in a dangerous universe. We won't abandon our allies just because they once doubted us. Through the viewport, another void sphere bloomed in New Aldebaran's atmosphere. But this time, Sarah felt something she hadn't in days. Hope. Sometimes the oldest lessons held the answers to the newest threats. Humanity had spent millennia learning to throw rocks very, very well. Now those primitive skills, combined with their allies' advanced science, might be all that stood between civilization and the void. The real question was, would they be ready in time? The Alliance. The manufacturing floor of Earth's Singapore orbital shipyard had never seen such a diverse collection of species working side by side. Sarah Chen watched from the observation platform as human engineers collaborated with beings from across the galaxy, all focused on a single goal: survival. Moravian crystal smiths worked their quantum computational magic on rows of modified QX7 rifles, their bodies glowing with complex calculations. Droxy energy specialists, their tentacles precisely manipulating plasma fields, calibrated the weapon's quantum tunneling matrices. Human mechanical engineers made final adjustments to the physical components, their primitive expertise proving crucial to the integration process. The first batch of capital ship retrofits is complete, Admiral Vexthor reported, gliding up beside her. The quantum lance batteries have been successfully installed on 30% of the combined fleet. Sarah nodded, studying the massive weapon arrays being mounted on ships in the orbital docks above. The QX7's technology had been scaled up dramatically, creating ship-to-ship weapons that could punch through the void ship's quantum defenses. But there had been complications. How many burnouts in the latest tests? She asked. Vexthor's tentacles coiled uncomfortably. 7. The power requirements for ship-scale quantum tunneling are proving challenging. Even with Droxy energy handling and Moravian computational matrices, maintaining stable quantum states at that scale. Show me, Sarah interrupted, pulling up the test data on her neural interface. The numbers were troubling. While the handheld QX7s worked perfectly, scaling up the technology revealed new problems. The larger the quantum tunnel, the more it wanted to collapse. They were fighting basic physics and losing. Dr. Chen, a young human engineer, Marcus Wong, rushed up to the platform. I think we found something. You need to see this. In the prototype bay, Marcus's team had been running simulations on a modified quantum lance. The massive weapon, easily the size of a small shuttle, hummed with potential energy. We've been approaching this wrong, Marcus explained, pulling up holographic models. We've been trying to create one large quantum tunnel for each shot. But what if instead we created thousands of small ones? Sarah finished, seeing where he was going. Like a shotgun spread instead of a single bullet. Exactly. The void ships can handle large quantum disruptions. They probably use similar principles themselves. But overwhelming them with multiple small tunnels, could overload their defensive systems. Ixtal chimed in. The Moravian scientists' crystalline form pulsing with excitement. And we already know how to create stable small-scale tunnels from the QX7. Sarah turned to Vexthor. How quickly can we modify the existing quantum lances? The Droxy Admiral's tentacles writhed in quick calculation. With all species working together, perhaps 2 weeks. But his translator crackled with concern. The void ships grow bolder. 3 more systems have gone dark since yesterday. Then we work faster, Sarah said firmly. She opened a channel to all manufacturing levels. Listen up. We have a new design to implement. I need every engineer, every technician, every scientist working on this. Human, Droxy, Moravian. It doesn't matter. We're in this together. The next 14 days passed in a blur of activity. The combined fleet hung in orbit above Earth, ships of all shapes and sizes being retrofitted with the new weapons. The void ship's advance had slowed, perhaps sensing the preparation for a counterattack, but they still probed the edges of defended space. On the final day of modifications, Sarah stood with her unlikely allies on the observation deck, watching the last quantum lance being installed on a massive Droxy dreadnought. You know, Vex Thor said thoughtfully, 3 months ago, I would have dismissed any suggestion of using human weapon designs. Now we've rebuilt our entire fleet around your technology. Not just our technology, Sarah corrected. We provided the basic principles, but this, she gestured at the integrated systems before them. This is something new, something none of us could have created alone. Ixtal's crystalline form shimmered in agreement. Perhaps that is what the void ships do not expect. They seem to target individual species, individual technologies. But we have created something unprecedented. A true fusion of approaches. Warning klaxons suddenly blared throughout the station. Sarah's neural interface flashed with urgent data. Multiple void ship signatures detected, the AI announced. Approaching Sol system. Estimated time to weapons range. 6 hours. Sarah looked at her alien colleagues. No, her friends. Humanity's primitive ballistic expertise, combined with Moravian quantum science and Droxy energy manipulation, had created something unique in the galaxy's history. Now they would find out if it was enough. Well, she said, checking the power readings on her modified QX7. I guess we're about to test our theory. The combined fleet began moving into defensive formations around Earth. Humanity's homeworld glowed blue and green below them. A jewel they would defend with everything they had, alongside allies who had once dismissed them as backwards. Sometimes the greatest strength came not from advancing alone, but from learning to combine the old and the new, the primitive and the advanced, into something greater than the sum of its parts. The void ships were coming, but this time they would face a galaxy united. The counterstrike. They came out of the dark like holes in reality itself, a fleet of void ships, their surfaces drinking in light and matter alike. Sarah Chen watched from the bridge of the combined fleet flagship Eternal Dawn as the enemy approached Earth. The massive vessel, a hybrid of human, Droxy, and Moravian engineering, hummed with power beneath her feet. 30 void ships detected, the tactical AI announced. Formation suggests standard absorption pattern. They're preparing to begin planetary extraction. Admiral Vex Thor's tentacles rippled with controlled tension as he studied the tactical display, just as they did at New Aldebaran. They'll try to establish a quantum link with the planetary core first. Not this time, Sarah said firmly. She opened a channel to the combined fleet. All ships, this is Dr. Chen. Remember your training. Don't bunch up. They want us to concentrate our fire so they can absorb it. Spread out, time your shots, and most importantly, she took a deep breath. Trust in each other. The void ships moved with terrible grace, their formation spreading like an inkblot across space. The first void spheres began to appear, perfect circles of nothing that would swallow anything they touched. Multiple quantum signatures detected, Ixtal reported from the science station, their crystalline form pulsing with rapid calculations. They're attempting to establish larger tunneling fields. Now, Sarah commanded. The combined fleet erupted into action. But instead of the usual barrage of energy weapons, the modified ships unleashed something new. Each quantum lance fired not a single massive burst, but thousands of tiny quantum tunnels, each one carrying the kinetic impact of a traditional ballistic round through space itself. The void ship's defenses, designed to handle large-scale quantum manipulation, suddenly faced an overwhelming spray of smaller disruptions. It was like trying to stop a shotgun blast with a shield designed for artillery. Direct hits confirmed. Vex Thor's tentacles writhed with excitement. Their quantum fields are destabilizing. On the tactical display, Sarah watched as the first void ship's surface began to crack, its perfect darkness marred by lines of normal space bleeding through. But the enemy was far from defeated. The void ships responded with a new tactic. They began generating rapid-fire void spheres, trying to interrupt the quantum shotgun blasts before they could connect. Space itself became a chaos of competing quantum states. "They're adapting," Sarah warned. "Implement pattern delta. Don't let them predict your timing." The human gunners, trained for centuries in the art of leading targets and compensating for movement, proved invaluable. They coordinated with Droxy energy specialists to vary the quantum tunnel timing, while Moravian computers calculated optimal firing solutions. A void ship disappeared in a flash of released energy as its quantum field finally collapsed. Then another. The combined fleet pressed its advantage, but the enemy was learning. Multiple void spheres forming around the eternal dawn. Ixtal warned. "They're trying to cut us off from normal space." Sarah grabbed the command rail as the massive ship shuddered. Emergency quantum pulse. All power to the dispersal field. The flagship's hybrid systems responded instantly. Moravian quantum matrices redirected power through Droxy energy conduits, while human-designed mechanical systems provided the raw kinetic force. The void spheres wavered and collapsed. They didn't expect us to understand their technology, Sarah realized. They certainly didn't expect us to combine it with primitive ballistic principles. The battle raged for hours. Ships were lost on both sides, but the combined fleet's hybrid technology proved devastating. The void ships, for all their advanced technology, couldn't adapt to the sheer unpredictability of the attack. Finally, the remaining void ships began to retreat, their perfect formations broken. The tactical display showed them preparing for quantum jumps out of the system. "Should we pursue?" Vex Thor asked, his tentacles coiled with battle readiness. Sarah studied the data one last time. "No, let them run. Let them tell others what happened here. Let them know that the galaxy isn't divided anymore, that primitive and advanced, old and new, have learned to work as one." As the void ships disappeared into quantum space, Sarah looked down at Earth, still safe and blue below them. Humanity had come so far from its early days of throwing rocks and shaping metal. But it was those ancient skills, combined with new understanding and allies who had learned to respect them, that had saved their world. The bridge crew, human, Droxy, Moravian, and others, worked together seamlessly now, coordinating damage control and recovery operations. There would be more battles to come, but something fundamental had changed in the galaxy. The age of singular advancement, of one path to the future, was over. A new era of synthesis had begun. The legacy. 1 year after the Battle of Earth, the Grand Hall of Innovation looked very different. Where once separate species had sat in segregated sections, now the delegates mingled freely. Sarah Chen smiled as she watched a group of Droxy engineers enthusiastically discussing ballistics theory with human colleagues, their tentacles moving in excitement as they debated trajectory calculations. "Hard to believe this is the same room where they laughed at the QX-7. Admiral Vex Thor said, gliding up beside her. His ceremonial armor now bore the integrated insignia of the combined fleet, a symbol of their continued alliance. "The galaxy's changed," Sarah replied, watching a Moravian crystal smith demonstrating quantum computational matrices to a mixed group of students. "We all have." The void ships hadn't returned since their defeat at Earth, but their impact on galactic society had been profound. The success of combining primitive human ballistic science with advanced alien technology had sparked a revolution in thinking about progress itself. The Galactic Science Academy's latest report is quite interesting, Ixtal commented. their crystalline form shimmering with amusement. Applications to study obsolete technologies are up 800%. Everyone wants to understand the principles we overlooked in our rush to advance. Sarah nodded. After the battle, research teams across the galaxy have begun re-examining abandoned technologies with fresh eyes. The Droxy had discovered that their ancient chemical propulsion systems, combined with modern quantum tunneling, could create engines more efficient than pure energy drives. The Moravians had found that incorporating physical crystalline matrices into their quantum computers dramatically improved processing speed. It's not just about the technology, Sarah said, gesturing to where various species gathered around display pods showing the latest innovations. It's about perspective, about understanding that progress isn't always linear. The main presentation screen lit up, displaying footage from the latest combined fleet exercise. The ships look different now. Organic curves of Droxy design flowing into angular human geometry, overlaid with crystalline Moravian sensor arrays. They were neither purely advanced nor primitive, but something new entirely. The void ships taught us humility, Vexthor observed, his tentacles moving thoughtfully. They showed us the danger of assuming our path was the only path forward. And the danger of forgetting our foundations, Ixtal added. Each of our species had pieces of the solution all along. We just needed to learn to see value in different approaches. Sarah's neural interface pinged with a reminder. It was almost time for her presentation. Not about weapons this time, but about the educational exchange program she'd helped establish. Young engineers and scientists from across the galaxy now trained together, learning each species' unique approach to physics, mathematics, and technology. You know what the most interesting development has been, she said, watching a human child and a young Droxy attempting to solve a puzzle together. We've stopped talking about primitive and advanced technologies entirely. Everything is just tools, different approaches to understanding the universe. The void ships had come expecting to find a divided galaxy, species too proud of their advancement to learn from each other. Instead, they had catalyzed a transformation. The combined fleet was just the beginning. Now research teams, engineering corps, and scientific institutions throughout known space had embraced diversity of thought and approach. Next presenter, Dr. Sarah Chen, the AI announced. Topic: Integration Theory, the future of multi-species innovation. As Sarah made her way to the podium, she passed the display case where the original QVX-7 rifle was now housed. The plaque beneath it read not primitive human weapon, but first step in quantum integration theory. It stood alongside other artifacts. Droxy energy matrices, Moravian computational crystals, all part of the same story. Distinguished delegates, she began, looking out at the mixed audience. A year ago, we learned that the future doesn't belong to the most advanced technology or the most ancient wisdom. It belongs to those willing to learn from both. The assembled beings, human, alien, and everything in between, listened intently. There was no laughter now, no dismissal of ideas, because they seemed too simple or too complex. The age of division was over. Humanity had earned its place in the galaxy, not by abandoning its past or blindly embracing the future, but by showing that true progress came from building bridges between the two. And in doing so, they had helped create something greater than any single species could have achieved alone. The void ships had sought to exploit the gaps between civilizations. Instead, they had helped forge a galaxy more united in its wonderful diversity than ever before. That was the real legacy of the Battle of Earth, not the victory itself, but the understanding that had bloomed in its wake. The future belonged to all of them, together.